This episode is presented by Anchor Branding.
Yeah, don't you see the danger, John, inherent in what you're doing here? Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
It's hardly appropriate to start hurling generalizations.
If I may, I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
Great catastrophe happens with the computers.
2 million lines of code.
Yes. Just a classic case if you got to restart the computer. To turn the system off.
We're going to have to turn everything off.
Turn it on.
And when we turn it back on, it should be fine.
This is 1993 understanding of computers.
There's a lot of computer stuff in here.
Yeah. I prefer to be called a hacker.
But she could hack.
Hack meaning use a computer, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, in the history books, this will go down as one of the Mount Rushmore blockbusters of blockbusters.
Yeah.
The CGI, which is dated now, mixed with the practical effects, when that T-Rex eye comes down to the Jeep, and
with
the
light,
girl's shining light on it, that is a T-Rex.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot tell a difference between a real T-Rex and that. And it was this giant puppet, like this giant mechanical head that they had built. You're like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, you hear about CGI getting so expensive and like, you know, with Marvel, it's like their projects are being delayed because CGI, whatever, technicians are overworked and stretched thin. Why don't we just go back to building practical?
There's so many things you could be doing.
Yeah.
And that's why Christopher Nolan
is
pioneering.
I know, he's coming back. This isn't an original idea to me, so don't want to spend too much time here, but there's an argument to be made about this movie being an analogy for Steven Spielberg's career of he created in a lot of ways, was like pioneering these CGI techniques.
Wow.
And ultimately he just wasn't able to keep up, and like his movies suffered because of the competition with bigger CGI projects.
Because he opened the door.
Yeah.
Wow.
So with that said, I mean, talk about iconic films. Steven Spielberg, of the 20th century, he probably has 3 of the 4 heads on the Mount Rushmore most iconic movies.
Yeah.
You got Jaws, you got E.T., you've got Jurassic Park.
Which Jaws is claimed to be the literal first blockbuster.
Yeah. That's where
the term comes from, because there was a line around the block.
Yeah. It's crazy. But Spielberg, literally, he just has this touch of like, he knows how to make a movie specifically iconic. Like, there's just no other way to say it. But our first segment is going to be, let's recast the director. It's really impossible to think about anyone else behind this movie. And so it's a fun exercise of like, what could be done if someone else was in the director chair? It doesn't have to be 1993. Could be anybody.
Exactly what you just said. The easiest answer, I cannot picture anybody else, nor would I want anyone else to do it. But for the sake of the discussion, sake of segment, there's only one person in my mind who I would want. If you're forcing me to switch out Spielberg for someone else, there's only one person. James Cameron.
Yeah. It's a great call.
Speaking of, Spielberg has the Mount Rushmore of blockbusters. Like James Cameron literally is on the Mount Rushmore of highest grossing movies with Titanic and Avatar.
Yeah, both Avatars.
And both of those, Titanic used a whole practical set with lots of CGI as well, kind of layered over it, similar to Jurassic Park in a really tasteful way. And then Avatar is just obviously the peak example of using CGI to the highest degree.
Right.
Highest quality level.
Yep.
Plus all of the Alien movies, the Terminator movies.
Yep.
Because really what you want from a Jurassic Park film is the perfect blend of this kind of family adventure movie.
Yep.
And to be honest, pretty scary.
Yeah.
And so, in my mind, James Cameron has done all that's needed. He could take this and do it well. I think it's probably a little more scary and adult if James Cameron does it.
It becomes more, which it seems like what they're leaning in with the sequel of, it becomes a monster movie and less of like a experience the wonder of the world kind of movie.
Which is, that's exactly why I think Cameron would do it better than, I don't know who they're getting to direct these new ones, Jurassic World
I don't know.
movies. But James Cameron, we've seen in like mainly Avatar Way of Water, like he can infuse a thriller adventure movie with the family element, you know, that you care about these characters and the relationships they have, and the scary, the intense, and still make it this look at the wonder of this world like he did in Avatar.
Yeah, I love that pick. I mean, obviously him directing anything would be fantastic. I think he would be a great choice. Here's my pick. I went the opposite direction as you.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a wacky pick, but bear with me. He's never done anything like this, but everything he does...
Kyle Mooney.
Oh, yeah.
He's never done anything like this. I think he'd be great at it.
It's just a YouTube short. No, he's everything that this director does. He can have a really like out there quirky scenario, but he has super duper grounded characters that you care about. And in my opinion, that's the weakness of this movie. You don't really care about any character other than just that they're people that you want to survive.
Yeah.
James Gunn. He's I don't know that he's directed anything outside of superhero movies, but like with what he did with Guardians, he makes you care about these obscure CGI characters. Everybody has an arc. James Gunn, I think, would have a way of grounding it that I think is missing from the 1993 version.
He does have that ability in like Suicide Squad or something where you're like, ultimately, this is this weird hodgepodge group of these people who are thrown in together. They're not really all that lovable, but somehow there's still investment from the audience because of the way he's able to tie them all together and have them interact with each other. So throw him a couple of grandkids in there, and
there's gonna
watch
be some
them work.
There's gonna be some silly dialogue, and just give him Jeff Goldblum.
Oh yeah,
we need it. Come on, DCU.
That would be really fun. I think again that would probably be more gory than Spielberg's take.
Yeah,
where he's probably showing a lot more severed arms and blood and whatnot. I mean, we're not cutting away to a shaking Jeep when Ned is getting torn apart.
Oh yeah, no, we're seeing it.
Yeah,
we're seeing the guts spill,
and there's going to be a little humor in there as well.
Yeah. All right, next segment. We're going to move on to a segment that we call Weakest Link. It is what it sounds like. Let's talk about, again, super duper strong movie we both grew up on, I think, right? Same for you?
As soon as my homeschool mother would allow me.
Okay. From our coming of age on. So let's talk about what are the weaknesses of this movie, because it does exist, but because of the nostalgia, because of what it is, we tend to just blow past them.
Yeah.
It's clear to me. The weakest link of Jurassic Park is Dr. Alan Grant, our main character. Alan Grant, I don't think it's necessarily Sam Neill's fault, but the character just has zero charisma. Which, if you want to go this route where it's like a little bit of an anti-hero, a little bit of like somebody who you're not necessarily like going to be prone to rooting for, lean all the way into that.
Yeah.
Instead, he's just like pretty boring, a little bit rude, doesn't really contribute very much at all. I think that you can take that character and do so much more. He has his whole character flaws. He doesn't like kids, doesn't want kids, but then he's forced into this situation where he's like the surrogate father for the weekend. And but they never really play that up. Like they never really have too sweet of moments.
Yeah.
It's just all very, the heart rate never goes up.
Honestly, that is the one thing that I would say Jurassic World did better. You're like Chris Pratt and his character is much more likable and heroic in a sense.
Yep.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
What does Dr. Sattler see? No one knows.
His character does just enough. I think that's in tandem with that. Are we saying weakest link can be any concept of the movie, or we're going person?
Could be anything.
Character. Okay. So in tandem with that, I have some questions about his arc as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the whole theme of the movie, which we'll get into and we'll talk about, is this like control of nature, and you can't control it, and Goldblum's this chaotician. That's the kind of the main theme. And then this character arc that Dr. Grant has is, like you just outlined, doesn't like kids, ends up being thrown in the mix and caring for these kids.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a clear enough correlation between the two. I think
just they needed something for his character.
Yeah, but I think there's a couple of, like, you just throw in a couple of little dialogue things here. They have the right pieces in place. You just need to maybe have a couple of lines here and there where they allude to some things where you go, okay, he doesn't want kids because he can't control them. He likes his life controlled.
Mm-hmm.
He likes things in a certain way, and kids destroy that.
Yeah.
And then through this whole experience, he realizes chaos is all around me anyway.
Right.
The thing that matters is not trying to control it,
Yeah.
but the thing that matters is forming these connections with the people around me that I care about. And having something like that be now, he's grown from this.
Yeah.
I think that's the weakest link, is you're kind of like, oh, that's really sweet. He cares for these kids now. What did that do?
Right.
Like, how does that relate to anything else?
Right. Which, yeah, I mean, literally it's teed up. Dr. Sattler in the beginning when they're at their dig is like, what's so wrong with kids? And he says they smell. Like, he could have just been like, I like my life the way it is.
Yeah, destroy things.
Yeah, like,
if he had just said,
kids are out of control.
kids ruin everything, they destroy things, and then you go into a park where dinosaurs destroy things, and that gives him new perspective on, like, oh, kids aren't so bad.
Yeah.
Which, this movie being the adventure movie that it is, similar to a couple weeks ago when we did Pirates of the Caribbean, this movie, I can assume, was set out to be a fun, scary dinosaur adventure.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be anything else. So we're not knocking it in any way, being like, oh, it's, flawed in this way or weak in this way and it should be better. It did exactly what it needed to do, and it doesn't need to be changed in any way.
Yeah.
But if we're talking taking an adventure movie to the next level of being like this family story or something like that as well, does give it that extra oomph.
I do think that that's a newer idea. Like, I think in the 90s and before, like, especially in like the 80s, there's this delineation between action movie and like drama, where it's like, if you want to have a character arc or have something to say, you do drama. And if you want to have a fun movie, you do an action movie. But it feels like genre in general has just kind of blended. And so, yeah, this is like our modern take on obviously a movie that probably couldn't be more successful if you changed anything about it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the meat here. Listener, if you haven't seen Jurassic Park in a while or you have forgotten, here's a recap for you. In Jurassic Park, billionaire John Hammond invites a group of experts to preview his island theme park filled with clone dinosaurs. Things go wrong when a disgruntled employee shuts down the security systems and a tropical storm threatens the island. As the dinosaurs escape, the group, along with Hammond's grandchildren, must fight to survive. In the end, as the survivors escape, Hammond realizes nature cannot be controlled.
John, the kind of control you're attempting is, it's not possible. Listen, if there's one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and it crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but, well, there it is.
There it is.
You're implying that a group composed entirely of female animals will breed?
No, I'm simply saying that life, finds a way.
So that's where we're headed here. We're talking about the sin of control. And really what we're talking about is not necessarily a sin in the sense of like an action. Really what it is it's just a wrong belief. The idea that we have control over our circumstances.
Yeah.
And ultimately it's distrust in God.
Yeah, it's too much confidence in one's own abilities.
Yeah.
Hammond's confidence in what he had created.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the idea that with enough time, with enough prep, with enough thought, I can make things the way I want them to be.
Yep.
I can prepare for every outcome, and I can force, my life or fate to happen in these certain ways, which ultimately is not true.
Yep.
We don't have that kind of power. And so to think that we do is to say, I don't need God's help.
Yep.
I don't need his power and control because I'm powerful enough myself.
Yep.
So it's ultimately kind of a form of self-worship because you're like, I have the ability in order to make my life what I want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's this idea that I know best.
Yeah. Which is how all sin comes from. It's rooted in some ways. God has instructed us in one way. I think I know better, so I'm going to do it this other way.
Yeah, and really what we're talking about is pride. Like, it's been said that pride is the mother of all sins because every other sin flows from it. This idea that, like we just said, I know best, so therefore I'm going to do my own thing. And really within this, specifically what we're talking about with control, just this idea that like, I'm going to pursue the outcome that I desire regardless of how it affects others and regardless of what God has to say about it. Right.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, this is something that all of us, if you're a believer, you're going to hear this and think like, oh yeah, I agree with like what we have to say here. In reality, this is an uncommunicated belief. Like this is a subconscious belief that is natural to man. So going back to the Garden of Eden, like God tells Adam, you're to rule over the land. You're to work the garden, subdue it, and have control, essentially.
Yeah.
Sin enters the world, and that is broken. We no longer, it says, the ground will fight against us. Thorn and thistles will grow up, and the ground will fight us. And so we no longer have that control. And so it's almost like an echo back to our creation, and our original design is to rule over the world. However, now that's broken and impossible. And so because of the state of the world, we are required to lean on God.
Yeah.
So with that said, the most important character in this for us is Hammond, the creator of the park.
Yeah.
And he, from the very beginning, whenever he comes to the dig site, he says, basically, I've got these investors. They need some experts to sign off. If only I can convince you to sign off on it. He doesn't say, come give me your opinion, point out the flaws. He says, I need to convince you to sign off on it to the paleontologists. And so from the start, it's clear, like, he wants the outcome that he wants. He doesn't actually want to hear anything other than that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He tries to take them on the tour to show them all the wonderful things. And they keep wanting to hold up. Let's pause and look into this. He wants to put him on the seat that just goes by the lab.
Yeah.
But they stop to go inside and dig a little deeper.
That's exactly right. Like before we meet really any characters, we see that guy who's digging up the amber with the mosquito, and he says, Hammond hates inspections. They slow everything down. And
He's
so
trying to get through it.
From the start, we have this view that, again, Hammond just wants to control the situation. He just believes inherently that he knows best, that everything's going to be safe because he's designed it that way. Proverbs 19:2 says, desire without knowledge is not good. How much more will hasty feet miss the way? And so there's never a con to slowing down. Whenever we think like, I don't want anybody to look at this, I don't want anybody to check in on me, like that's a red flag for us that we're in this state of pride, that we think that we know best, no one else does.
I was just going to say, Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. That whole idea in the wisdom of the Proverbs is don't trust yourself. Trust the Lord, not yourself. He will make your path straight. Right. He will iron out the problems and the things that, we think we can control, which is the exact opposite of what Haman's doing.
Yeah, there's a way that seems right to man, but in the end, its way is death. Just this idea that like we can be so confident, and that doesn't actually translate to the outcomes, right?
The full 50 miles of perimeter fence are in place.
And the concrete modes and the motion sensor tracking systems. Donald, dear boy, relax. Try and enjoy yourself.
Let's get something straight, John. This is not a weekend excursion. This is a serious investigation of the stability of the island. Your investors, whom I represent, are deeply concerned. 48 hours from now, if they're not convinced, I'm not convinced. I shut you down, John.
In 48 hours, I'll be accepting your apologies.
I think about Hammond whenever the lawyer is coming into the gates. He's like asking about the security precautions, and he's like, I've done everything. We've got the fences, concrete moats, motion tracking system. Like, just relax. Like, it's all taken care of. Mm-hmm. The ways that he, like you mentioned, wants to be there for the birth of every single dinosaur. Like, his attempts at control, like, are not necessarily bad in and of themselves. The problem is that he thinks that he controls everything in the situation, right?
Yeah.
Like,
the interesting thing about this movie is, like, you would assume the creator of Jurassic Park that goes awry and kills all these people to be more of the villain, more of the evil scientist type of character, where you're like, oh, he's created monsters. I actually really enjoy the way that they did it, where Hammond is lovable and relatable. His intentions are good. He's not this villain character. He's this Walt Disney that went too far. You're not rooting against Hammond in this film, which is a really unique way that I think most people wouldn't have done. But like you said, it all is pointing to he was trying to make everything right. He did, he spared no expense. Mm-hmm. He spent all the money and everything to make it right. Yep. He's trying to just get these inspections done so that they get passed, so that he can start giving joy to the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good point, that like his intentions are pure. Like he whenever the lawyer is like, we can charge whatever we want, $10,000 a day. And he's like, no, I don't want this to just be for the super rich. Like, I want this to be for the world. Like, I'm doing a service to the world here.
Yeah.
Nothing that he does is in and of itself bad. Mm-hmm. But the pride and hubris that he has, that he knows best, is what causes the problems for everybody on the island.
Gee, the lack of humility before nature that's being displayed here staggers me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Malcolm, but I think things are a little bit different than you and I had feared.
Yeah, I know. They're a lot worse.
Now, wait a second. Now, we haven't even seen the part where
Don't let him talk. There's no reason. No, I want to hear every viewpoint. I really do.
Yeah, don't you see the danger, John, inherent in what you're doing here? Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
So he's getting this pushback from mostly Malcolm, as well as, his game warden, as well as there's a lot of voices that are saying, hey, at least let's slow down. Like, this thing's not ready yet. Yeah. And he just wants to push forward. He refuses to see the cracks in what he's building, and not even because in his mind, he's like, I haven't seen any problems. Like, nothing has really happened. But what the wise counsel that he's invited to the island is pointing out is, hey, something will happen. Like, you don't have control. Nature finds a way. Given enough time, there's going to be problems here. But he just refuses to hear that.
Yeah.
James 4 says, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town, spend a year there and trade there and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. And so, again, it's not saying don't do this or that, but understand God is in control.
Mhm.
Like, God works everything for the good of those who love him. Even if it's not the good that we expect or that we think is good or right, and it's hard to see, and sometimes it's really hard to see. Like, there's dark, broken things in the world, but ultimately it's like God is in control. We are not. There's a pressure release on that. Like, we don't have to be in control.
Right.
But whenever we cling to this illusion that, again, like Dr. Sattler says, we never had control in the first place, but when we hold on so tightly to it, that's when things become problematic.
Right. And I think you just mentioned sometimes it's really hard to see.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah 55, 8 and 9 talks about God is saying, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord." Where he's talking about, you aren't going to see things the way I see things. You aren't going to do things the way I do things. And we trust in that because he is better. The Bible describes God as love, as holy, as perfect, as just, as trustworthy, all these things. So we can go, okay, where I mess up and I sometimes don't get it right, he never messes up.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when we see things that don't make sense to us, we can trust that it makes sense to God.
This is the reality that we have to accept. Whenever we make our plans and we think that we know what's going to happen and we have our desired outcomes for our life, and whatever it is, our kids' life, our family, our career, whatever, it's usually not until we miss the expectations that we realize how tightly we're holding on to those things.
Yeah.
But you can't think through this one, John. You have to feel it.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Hiring Nedry was a mistake. That's obvious. We're over-dependent on automation. I can see that now. Now, the next time, everything's correctable.
John.
Creation is an act of sheer will. Next time, it'll be flawless.
It's still the flea circus. It's all an illusion.
When we have control again...
You never had control. That's the illusion. I was overwhelmed by the power of this place. But I made a mistake, too. I didn't have enough respect for that power, and it's out now. The only thing that matters now are the people we love. Alan and Lex and Tim. John, they're out there where people are dying.
And he's still like, okay, if I could just go back and there's a couple of bugs in the system and I can tweak things and then it can be perfect.
Right.
He's still in the face of that has not understood.
Yeah.
And so that pride of no matter what's going wrong, if I just had a little bit more time, then I could have blank.
Yep. 1 Peter 5 says, humble yourselves. So we talked about pride is the root of all of this, thinking that we know best. But Peter calls us to humble ourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting your anxieties on him because he cares about you. We think in the moments of anxiety, that's when we need to reach for control because we feel unsteady, unstable. But in reality, he's saying the next step there isn't to try to regain control and take control of the situation. It's to humble yourself because God, again, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. He's strong enough to hold us. So just allow yourself to be held.
And we will be right back.
Hey, listener, we just want to take a pause and say thank you for listening. We love getting to do this podcast, and it's listeners like you that make it possible for us. If you're not following us wherever you get your podcasts, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, do it. That way you can stay in the loop every time a new episode drops. If you know anybody who would love this episode or any of the other movies we've covered, don't be afraid to go ahead and share it with them. That would help us out so much, and we would really appreciate it. Thank you so much again for listening.
All right, listener, let's talk branding. Because if you want your brand to actually stand out, you need Anchor Branding Company. These guys are the pros at turning your logo into something people actually want to wear, want to use, or show off, From premium custom apparel and branded merch to eye-catching office signage or more, they do it all. And if you're thinking, I want to get my company's gear out there, but I don't want to pack a million boxes, good news, they can handle all the kitting, fulfillment, and shipping for you. Do you need some new employee uniforms, a killer swag store, custom online shop that people can order from? Anchor Branding Co. makes everything happen. Head to anchorbranding.com to get started today, because if your brand is going to make some waves, you should probably have an anchor. And back to the show.
Once things have gone wrong, there's this like grasping for control moment where they're all in the control room. Hammond and Sattler and Malcolm and Mr. Arnold are all there, and they're talking about basically their options. The game warden says there's the lysine contingency. Basically, we can just undo all of this. We can kill all the dinosaurs because there's basically like a built-in gene or program or whatever that all the dinosaurs can be killed at once, which the sequel is definitely abandoned. So we see Hammond say, no, we're not doing that. We're going to press on because we're going to regain control. Yeah. Regardless of the ethics of killing all the dinosaurs. Or we won't go there. But what we see is as they're trying to regain control, their efforts actually potentially do more damage. Like there's more risk. Whenever they're rebooting the systems, the electric fence turns back on while Tim is on there and risks his life through their attempts to regain control. And they could have been on the other side.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest thing is when Ned turned off all the systems, he specifically left the raptor enclosure up and running so that the raptors wouldn't get out. When they reboot the whole system and everything has to shut off, they let the raptors out.
Right. So yeah, ultimately it becomes clear that control is completely lost. Chaos has taken over the island. Ultimately, the saving grace for the characters is the dinosaurs begin to fight each other.
Mr. Hammond, after careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park. So have I.
So this is this moment, the full arc for Hammond of he is so prideful, and then whenever his lack of control is exposed and it becomes clear because it's happening in front of them, that's when he's humbled. Matthew 23:12 says, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Like that's not a command or something. That's just a reality that Jesus is talking about. Like if you exalt yourself, eventually you aren't God, and that's going to become clear. Yeah. Whatever you're striving for or desiring or trying to maintain control over, it's going to be clear that you are not powerful enough. And so therefore you'll have no choice to be humbled. But if you, like 1 Peter talks about, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, it says whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Yeah. And so it's this reversal of what we think.
Yeah. So the next step in that is going, okay, if we know, and if anyone's really honest with themselves, as hard as it may be, and going, okay, yeah, I don't have control like I would want, like we just naturally want control of things, going, okay, I'm going to surrender control to the one who has it. I'm going to trust and let that go to him, that he loves me, like his word says. He cares about me, like his word says. He has made these promises that things will be made right, and he keeps his promises. So therefore, I'm going to let that go to him. And when I want control, when I'm anxious about something, when things aren't going the way I want to, rather than holding on tighter and trying to squeeze tighter and control more and just grit your teeth and bear down. So I know, okay, I'm going to let that go to God because he actually is in control and I'm not. He's better than I am.
Yeah. 2 Corinthians 12 says, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, my lack of control, so that Christ's power may rest on me. So it's like, ultimately our lack of control is to our benefit. Like we are able to access God's power, not necessarily in order to gain control or to do exactly what we want to do, but through our weaknesses, we're able to be aligned with God and access an even greater power through him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. We've done a bunch of these now. We're on episode 29, I think this is. And I feel like action movies tend to be the hardest for us because, it just tends to be more about the action and less about the characters and the message and all that kind of stuff, which we kind of are able to use. This is a pretty strong thematic action movie, which is rare.
Yeah. Yeah, they bring it up enough times. And to be honest, they mention God a good amount of times, but acknowledging, they think about it in this way of like, God created us and then God is dead. And now it's just humans versus dinosaurs. So it's interesting to then bring the conversation back to a theological one about our relinquishing control to God.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, in high school or whatever, are learning about different like conflict types and narratives, like man versus nature is one of the main ones. And this is like one of the biggest examples of a movie that's not like the villain isn't a person, even though it's kind of Hammond. The villain is nature. It's the storm. It's the dinosaurs. It's nature rebelling against man. And the proper context for that conversation is the world is broken because of sin, and scripture says nature is groaning out against us. Like because of us, because of mankind, the world is cursed. And so the world is essentially like rebelling against us. And so that's what creates that tension that exists in this movie. So it's a real theological idea that's just playing out as a science fiction
fun action movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. I love when we get to do these classic iconic movies like this.
Yeah. It's a good. That's all I got.
Roll credits.
Don't forget to follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and on Instagram at The Credits Podcast. If you know someone who would love this episode, go ahead and shoot it to them in a text. If it doesn't brighten their day, it'll certainly brighten ours.